Today on Creator Sessions, we get to hear from Shannon Wild. Now, her story is unlike anything I have ever heard. There was even this moment right when we started filming and she was looking off and she said, "I'm sorry, I was distracted by the baboons in my backyard." Shannon is a wildlife cinematographer and photographer based in South Africa. She has one of the most niche photography jobs and has traveled the world documenting some of the most elusive animals on our planet. As a freelancer, she has worked with some of the most recognizable names in the world, and her most recent documentary, The Real Black Panther, was just released on National Geographic Wild. She spent 18 months tracking this magnificent animal in some of the roughest and most dangerous terrain, also we could experience him from the comfort of our living room. Her passion for wildlife and animal conservation is the true north for her art. And in this very special creator session, she talks about why it's so important and shares some of her favorite experiences and stories behind some of her most recognizable work.
Hi, I'm Shannon Wild. I'm a wildlife photographer and cinematographer, and I'm based in Africa, but you might be able to tell from the accent that I'm actually Australian. I think one of the most important things for me in this line of work is I'm trying to somehow share and communicate the passion that I feel inside. So I feel so fortunate, and I'm constantly pinching myself that I get to do this. I get to do this as a job. But the real cherry on top is that I have the ability to share that with people, and that's what I love about also technology today and having a social presence is even if people don't have access to, say, a documentary that I make, I can share my experiences as a whole online, and I can interact with people, and I get a lot of questions about, especially as a female wildlife cinematographer, there's not many of us yet, but that's changing, and it's changing for the better. So I get a lot of questions from women and young girls that are aspiring to do this or go into a field that is maybe more naturally male dominated. And I love to be in a position where I can offer advice of my experiences, or maybe they were just reaching out to say thank you for sharing what you're doing because it's inspired me in some way. And that, for me, that's a really tangible experience, because it's easy in this line of work to get wrapped up into the moment of while I'm out filming. I can be days, weeks, months in the field, and we don't have interaction with a lot of people. We're just there in nature, which is beautiful. But sometimes it can disconnect you from the rest of the world, and that has its place, and I need that. But to be able to get feedback from people that it actually people have a visceral response to what I've created, it's hard to articulate how that feels, because it's so rewarding. I want people to feel some semblance of the level of passion that I have for wildlife and animals and protecting them. And I really love that this creative outlet for me can have a positive impact on the world. This is how I communicate. So I'm not strong in writing, for example, or trying to articulate on paper what I'm saying. I'm a very visual person, and it's the perfect medium for me to communicate how I feel through my work. And over the years I've developed my style, and I feel like it's a fairly distinct style, and that is very vibrant color. That is how I see the world. It is vibrant and punchy and beautiful And with my black and whites, it's very strong and contrasty, and I want that to indicate how I'm feeling in that moment of what I get to experience when I witness that, and have that feeling come across to the viewer without them having to be in that particular scenario. So I really hope that that's the end result of my work, and it's what I strive for. And so it's really special to me when I do get feedback that that's affected people in a positive way, not just educationally, but just emotionally, because we don't protect what we don't care about, and I want people to care. And if they have an emotional reaction to my work, that's the first step in having someone care about the subject matter. So within the first week of arriving in South Africa, I went out onto what we call a game drive, which is essentially a safari vehicle. It's open, and you drive around the bush looking for wildlife, and I obviously had my camera, but I was also very much just out to absorb the sounds and the feel of the bush and getting to know the smells and the terrain. And of course looking for wildlife. And there's one moment that it just stood out to me so much, and I get emotional actually talking about it now, because for this to happen within the first week of me arriving here, it was just this realization that I was actually here in Africa. Am I in a dream? So the sun was setting. I'd finished shooting. There wasn't enough light left. But we came upon a male lion, a beautiful big adult, and he was literally just meters from the vehicle. I feel like I could have reached out and touched him. He was very close, didn't care at all about our presence, and he just started calling out to his brother, who was somewhere off in the distance. We couldn't see him. But their calls can carry for, I believe it's up to maybe 8 kilometers. I'm not sure what that is in miles. So he starts calling, and literally meters from me. And their call is so deep and visceral that it physically vibrates through your chest. I mean, it's not just sound, it's this feeling of it, going through your body. And I literally started crying on the spot. It was this realization that, oh my God, I am in Africa. Like, I'm going to cry, because I remember this point where I think it was maybe 2 weeks before I literally got on the plane to South Africa, that I'd sold everything. I was kind of counting down and waiting to go. Sold my car and all these things and my furniture, and I watched a documentary, and I started crying in that documentary, and I'm generally not an emotional person, and I just started crying because there was this realization that I'm looking at these landscapes, and I thought, I'm going to be there in 2 weeks. That's going to be my life. Is this even happening? And so then, a week after I land, for this to happen, it all hit me. And I mean, this journey has been, like I said, incredibly difficult. It's been financially challenging, emotionally challenging, very physically challenging. But that's what's made it worth it. It's these moments, and I've had so many over this time, and the amazing places that I've got to visit and shoot in, and not just within Africa, but all over the world as my wildlife career has blossomed. There's so many pinch me moments where I feel truly blessed, despite all these challenges, despite how difficult the journey has been to get here, and all of the opportunities that I've had to give up. There have been so many. Those are the moments that make it all completely worth it. Whether I'm documenting it with a camera or just experiencing it for myself, absolutely 100% worth it. Another one that comes to mind that will always really stand out for me is filming polar bears. I'm not really the kind of person that loves the cold naturally. I do prefer warmer environments. So I was a little apprehensive going to the Arctic, but actually, obviously you prepare for it. You dress appropriately, and it was magical. I mean, this landscape is unlike anything else that I'd ever experienced. It's so stark and beautiful and different. And similar to my previous projects where there's a lot of challenge in finding the animal, polar bears are exactly the same. It's very special when you do find them. So in this particular situation, I was on a ship, and we would go out for 10 days at a time before going back to civilization. So we would live on the ship, and it's summertime, which means 24-hour sunlight. The sun does not go down whatsoever. So the pro of that is that we have essentially perfect lighting at all times. So it doesn't matter what time of day or night that you see a polar bear, the light is perfect. The downside is trying to get into a sleep pattern is almost impossible. And of course, the polar bears seem to turn up at like 2 in the morning or things like that. But definitely worth the lack of sleep. This footage is actually the very first polar bear that I saw and filmed. So it's particularly special for me. I've been going to the Arctic every year ever since, and this is the first year that I went was still my best sightings. So this footage, as a wildlife cinematographer, I like to shoot in slow motion because you really get to see and experience the nuances of their expressions and their movement and behavior that can be missed in real time. And so this beautiful slow motion footage of this polar bear, and he's just walking on pack ice. There's nothing else. It is just flat, white, beautiful ice. He's walking along. He has some very funny expressions. You'll notice his tongue comes out. It's very long, but what's quite surprising is that it's blue. I wasn't expecting that. So that was absolutely magic. And he was a very curious big bear. We were fortunate that he was a healthy bear and very confident. He actually spent about 2 hours walking around the ship. So we had actually got to a point with the ship that we couldn't go any further. We were in pack ice, and that was it. So the ice was solid right up to the boat. So this polar bear literally walked up to the side of the boat, and at one point stood up on its hind legs and put its paws on the side of the ship, trying to work out if he could maybe get on. And his nose was working overtime because they have an extremely strong sense of smell. And so he could smell all the people. He could smell all of us on the ship, and he was trying to work out if he could get on, which thankfully he couldn't. But there was one moment where when he's doing that, he was too close for me to actually film. So I switched over to shooting stills, and so I laid down on the deck of the ship, and there are openings on the side that you can shoot through it so that water and ropes can be put through. So I laid down on this deck, and I was shooting with a relatively short lens because he was so close. And I was pointing my camera out, and he basically was right in front of me, and he stood up really tall on the edge of the ice on his hind legs, and suddenly we were like face to face. So I have this dead-on shot. It's a portrait, and it's not cropped at all. It is as shot in camera, and he was literally a few feet away. So that was amazing. I'm looking through my viewfinder, and this face just pops up, and so I was able to get this really intimate portrait with direct eye contact, and it's still one of my favorite polar bear photos that I've taken ever since. First trip, first bear, amazing. So recently I finished quite a long-term project and with a very unique subject matter, and that's the very rare animal that is the black panther. And I know a lot of people are familiar with that term and they think that it's just the character, but black panthers are real. But they're also, I won't go necessarily into the nuances or the science of how that happens, but what I will say is a black panther is not a separate species unto itself. It is a form of melanism that happens in cat species. And I was specifically filming a leopard in India that has melanism. And so we essentially call that a black panther. And this project was extremely challenging in so many ways. The first reason, and I'll start at the beginning, which is finding out about this cat, this one particular cat. Thank you, Instagram. So my husband and I came across this picture of this beautiful black panther on Instagram by an incredible photographer called Shaz. And we basically said to each other, we need to make a film on this cat. And we did some research, and there was actually no professional footage or documentary made of a black panther surviving in the wild. There's plenty of captive animals and that kind of thing, but we just thought we have to do this. Without really knowing the level of challenge that it would be. Leopard are known for being elusive at the best of times, but add to that you're looking for one specific animal in a very dense forest. It just adds a whole other layer of challenge. But we reached out to Shaz and he was keen to collaborate. So then we pitched directly to National Geographic, and we're very fortunate to have this documentary greenlit. And so we turned up in India and started looking for this cat. Oh my goodness. So this project went for 18 months, and I can honestly say we needed every single second of that 18 months. And we could have filmed for another 18 months, in all honesty. It's such an elusive animal, and it's one thing to find an animal. It's another thing to be in the right position to film that animal. It's another thing to film it enough to create an hour-long documentary that is compelling. So we had quite a big job ahead of us. But wow, what an amazing animal. This cat is next level. I mean, it's so majestic and beautiful. It's really hard to articulate, and I hope that my images and the documentary convey even a portion of its beauty. It is incredible. When you look at it, it looks completely black, and it depends on the light that you actually see it in. So if it's in the shade, it just looks like a solid black cat. But it actually has spots. It is a leopard. And effectively, melanism is just an increase in melanin. That is what makes our skin color. It's what makes my hair dark. And so basically all of the fur on his body that would normally be orange or tan color is black as well. So when the light hits him just right, it's actually this incredible black on black pattern. So you can see his spots as a different kind of black. It is amazing. So, I mean, what a privilege. It was the most challenging project that I've done to date. And I truly hope that the results, it's released. I hope it conveys that to the audience. I really hope they love it the way that we loved having the chance to see him. He was incredibly difficult to find. We would go out every single day. So our day would start very early, maybe 5:30. We would go into the forest, and there were a lot of very strict restrictions on being able to work in this forest. So we had to only access it from a certain time in the morning, and we had to be out of this forest by a certain time at night, regardless of season or day length. So that made it quite challenging in that on a season where the sun would set at 7, we had to be out of the forest at 6. So we miss this hour of beautiful, gorgeous, like golden light, and this forest is magical for it. But also, these are nocturnal cats. So leopard, they are very active, what we would call crepuscular, which dusk and dawn, they start getting really active, and they're active throughout the night. We were not allowed to film at night. We were not allowed in the forest. So we had to, A, find him, B, try to capture enough footage of him doing interesting things during the day to create this documentary and have a story to tell about him. And what we ended up focusing on was very much the challenge of him living there. He is the only one of his kind with this melanism in this forest. So he's very unique. And so this story, we decided to take the angle of telling him finding his place in this forest and the challenges he faces versus what a normal looking leopard does. And it's things that, the general public may not think of. So this is a very hot region. He's all black. So if he's out in the sun too much, he overheats. He absorbs all that heat. So he can't hunt during the day as long as what a normal colored leopard would be able to. All these, different challenges for him that he has to adapt to. So it's really fascinating watching him adapt to working the shadows. And then when monsoon season comes and everything gets really lush and green, how he can take advantage of that. I think the most challenging part of this documentary and the most heart-wrenching part was witnessing him face an extremely serious injury. And so leopard are very territorial, and being a male, they're fighting constantly for their territory. And so he had a very vicious fight with the dominant male in that area, who was much bigger, much older, much more experienced. And he came out of it with the most horrific facial wound, which you can see in the documentary. But he basically had this open wound right down his face, and it was fully open, and it honestly looked like his eye was missing. It was so swollen and awful that we couldn't see his eye. And then he's got this clear scratch marks, scars down his face. And seeing him like that was absolutely devastating because, A, we didn't know if he had other internal injuries or other serious injuries. This was bad enough. Would he come back from this? Would he lose his eye? Would he retreat from his territory, which may mean going to an area that we no longer have access to? Part of his territory already was in an area we had no access to. So our documentary was in jeopardy, but more importantly, we felt like maybe his life was in jeopardy. And so after that, he disappeared. And we would go out every single day hoping to find some sign that he'd been here and find him, check on his progress, see if he's healing or if he's okay. And gone. Like I think it was just almost 9 weeks. Completely no sign of him whatsoever. And as a team, we had a very small filming team. There was 3 of us, and then of course we're liaising with the producers in the US, being National Geographic. And we really had to say, okay, it's probably at a point where either A, he has died, or he's retreated and left this territory because he essentially maybe lost this fight. And we would still go out every single day. We're looking for him. And of course we're filming the forest, we're filming the other inhabitants. There's elephant and tigers and wild dog and normal coloured leopard and all sorts of, fun deer species and monkeys. So there's a lot going on that we're still filming, and this has to make part of the documentary to tell his greater story. But of course, if we don't have him, we don't have a documentary. But we would go out every day hoping to find him. And what's really quite funny in retrospect is one morning I woke up and I just had this feeling. I was positive that we were going to find him that day. I had a really good intuition that we would find him. It happened to be Friday the 13th, and I kid you not, within an hour of entering the forest, we found him. And I cannot tell you how happy that made us. So A, he was alive. B, thank God we still have a documentary. We can still keep working. And C, what was absolutely incredible about it was this horrific wound that he'd had 8 weeks earlier was now just this perfect white line down his face. It had healed incredibly, and it's a true testament to their resilience, because this is a leopard are solitary cats. There's no other cat with him that's helping lick his wound. It is literally him having to lick his paw, wipe his face. It's insane. I mean, it must have been incredibly painful, but it just goes to show their healing ability and their resilience. And he came back stronger than ever. He was confident, he was healthy, and he went on to expand his territory. And so from a documentary perspective, we go in with an idea of a story that we want, but we can't manipulate what's going to happen. We just have to adapt as we go. And so it made this really fascinating storyline of his life and challenges, and that's really what this story became about, him coming back from that and expanding his territory and becoming an extremely successful male leopard living in this very challenging forest. So, oh my goodness. What an emotional roller coaster it was making that film. So yeah, that was very difficult. I will say, on top of the emotional roller coaster that was this Black Panther's life and experience during that 18 months, it was a very emotional roller coaster and a physical roller coaster for me, because I actually managed to break my back out in the field of that forest filming in a vehicle accident. So I was out in a filming vehicle, which are open, obviously, otherwise we can't film. And thankfully my very large, very expensive gear was solidly bolted into the vehicle. But on one occasion, and unfortunately it was only 3 days after we found the panther again, so we were really excited. Yes, the panther's here, we're back. 3 days after I found him on that Friday the 13th, we had word that there was a sighting of him, and my driver over-enthusiastically started driving toward that area, and we hit a bump, and I just went flying and came down extremely hard on my back, and managed to fracture some thoracic vertebrae, had 4 bulging discs and a lot of severe nerve damage. So I wasn't able to work for a while after that. So it was, from both perspectives, the Panthers and mine, it was an extremely challenging time and project, but that's taken quite a long time for me to recover from. But I can walk, it's fine. I'm 2 years in now to the recovery, and I'm just starting to get to a point where I'm off painkillers and all that fun stuff. So I'm very lucky that it wasn't a lot worse, but of course it's thrown a spanner in the works career-wise for me. Since then I've had to scale back, and I'm just gradually sort of getting back into the field now. So I was able to, I had a significant amount of time off, and then sort of towards the end of that project, I was actually able to go back into that forest. It was definitely too soon. The roads are too bumpy. But I went anyway and managed to capture some really special and pivotal footage to contribute to the documentary, which was him successfully mating with a female that he'd pursued for a while, and some really important behavior in his life. So, yeah, it was a very interesting project, but very, very special. So the next clip is of 5 beautiful rhino, and that's something that's particularly close to my heart because here, living in South Africa, I get a lot of access to rhino conservation organisations as well as seeing them in the wild, but I'm also very aware of the challenges that they face. But this particular clip was actually filmed in Kenya, and I was there on assignment to film a short documentary specifically about rhino and elephant poaching. And it's actually the first time that I'd seen so many rhino together at once. And there's just something about Kenya. Each place has its own unique beauty. And I found that the sunsets in Kenya were just beautiful, and the skies, this beautiful cloud cover. So where I happened to be in this particular shot, as a wildlife photographer and filmmaker, often we want to get as low as possible, down to an animal's eye level, or so that we can simplify our background from that nice low angle. But in this case, they were beautifully on this high ridge, so they were already naturally elevated. So I actually had to get on top of the safari vehicle that I was in and shoot from there. And what was so beautiful is all these clouds. And so I did take a photo of the 5 together while they were there, and you can see the detail of each rhino, their skin and their features. But then I started filming, and I wanted to enhance the fact that it was close to dusk. There's this beautiful cloud. So I decided to shoot in silhouette, which basically meant I purposefully underexposed the shot so that I got this beautiful, dark, crisp outline of the rhinos, and you can see as they're moving around this beautiful body shape. You can see all the different horn lengths and shapes, and each individual has their own little character. And also what's really lovely is they were quite busy and moving around. I decided to hold this shot, and in filmmaking we have so many split-second decisions as to whether we follow an animal. Do we choose one animal to follow? Do we hold our shot? I decided to hold the shot in this case, and I'm really glad that I did, because apart from them moving around, at one point one got a little spooked for some reason, and you'll notice that its tail went up, and it's only a short little tail, and it curls, and it decided to run, and the others thought, okay, what's happening here? We better follow. And it's just this beautiful end to the clip because they all exit screen naturally. And as a filmmaker, that's something that's really important. If we're holding a shot, we're trying to hold until the scene or the behavior naturally comes to an end. So something like the animal exiting frame is just everything that we could hope for. So I'm really happy with this shot, and it was also a way for me to really accentuate the beautiful Kenyan orange skies.
I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this session with Shannon. It was about so much more than just being a photographer or sharing her favorite moments along her journey. It was really about her using her gift and her voice to further an incredibly important mission that affects our world. There was one really powerful thing that Shannon said that stood out to me. She said, "We don't protect what we don't care about, and I want people to care." Shannon has dedicated her life and her work to making people care. And that is why for Shannon, being a creator is so important. I want to close out this creator session with a final message from Shannon to anyone, but most importantly to young girls looking to pursue their passion as a career. I'm Haley, and thank you for joining Creator Sessions.
Because this industry is more male-dominated, I really hope that my journey encourages and inspires young women and girls who are thinking about getting into an industry that's perhaps male-dominated, or specifically wildlife photography or wildlife cinematography. My advice is do it. You can do it. If I can, you can, for sure. And on top of that, just know that the most important aspect is going to be not this idea of what you think it might be. From the outside, it can look glamorous in terms of, you travel to all these exotic locations, and just understand that the work is hard, it's challenging, like many industries. So you get back what you put in. And I think the most important thing is your goals and your passion have to be such that when the challenges come, and they will come, that you have enough reason to keep going. And in something like this, which can be a desirable industry or job, the people that make it in the end and that will stand apart are the ones that keep going. So for me, the word resilience comes to mind, and that encompasses pretty much my whole journey. I've had so many opportunities to give up along the way, and so many legitimate reasons, health reasons, and like I said, financial reasons. It's very challenging. It's a hard way to earn a living. And there's a lot of things that I've given up along the way to live this life and pursue this career. But for me, it's completely worth it. And I think if the end goal is you can combine something that you're really passionate about and turn that into your career and your work, it will be a lot of work, but you have that reason, that motivation to do the work, to get where you need to go. And it's a constant learning process. There is no end goal of, okay, well, I do this shot or this documentary and I'm done, I've made it. It's constant learning, constant challenges, constant reward for the content you produce and the experiences that you have and the people you meet and the places that you go. So my advice would just be prepared for the long haul. This kind of career doesn't happen quickly. I'm almost 17 years in, and I just feel like I'm starting to find my feet, to be honest. It's been a long, long road. Be prepared for the long journey and enjoy it. There are so many special moments, and it's worth every second. I'm Shannon Wild, and I'm so happy that you joined me for this creator session.